That's on the program Beyond 100 Days on TVC News. It's 7 days to the first anniversary of the President Bola Tinubu administration. On the program today, we focus on the education sector and how it's actually impacting Nigeria's students. I'll be having on the program today the National President, National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, Yomi Otubela. But while we wait to bring him on, I have with me in the studio Executive Editor, TVC News, Kayode Ladeyinde. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Ambassador.
Yeah, so looking at education, I think one great policy really that we've seen in this administration is that of the student loan scheme. And well, it's been greeted with different reactions, but really let's talk about your take on it, and especially considering some of its provisions.
Now, one thing is clear, there's hardly anything anyone would do, irrespective of which party is in power. There'll be some critics. Call them staunch critics, call them destructive critics, call them constructive critics. But the point is, there is a leap, there is a change, there is some kind of semblance of what we see in other climes. Education is key. There's no two-way about it. When we talk about education, we are able to, reduce crime. We are able to reduce all forms of criminalities. We are even able to look like a developing nation, so to say, because it's been a terrible situation for a country that has the highest number of out-of-school children, for a country that even getting good education now is becoming an issue. There's high level of proliferation of private schools, which I think Mr. Otubela will even want to talk about. So you can never underestimate that innovation, that idea to embrace that student loan scheme. It has come to stay. It has come to stay. We're waiting for states to, buy into the idea. We are waiting to see this thing be happen. And we're also waiting to see the transparency that will be put in place. We've listened to presidential spokespersons explaining how, how transparent it's going to be. But as media, we'll keep tab on them. We'll make sure that this thing is not for selected few, but for those people who truly need it, for those people who cannot afford to actually send themselves to school or their parents sending them to school. One of those interesting things this government has done is to remove that clause. That was that debatable clause where it said you must be earning up to 500,000 naira before you can apply for that loan. And I'm like, if you can earn 500,000 naira, do you actually need that loan to send your children to school? So it's a welcome idea. It's something that is noble. And like we said, let's see it being implemented.
Indeed, the implementation is what Nigerians are looking forward to. And looking at it from a more a broader perspective, we're talking about the budgets, the allocation for education in the 2024 budget. It's about 1.44 trillion naira. The figure is rising, but many are saying that the figure might be rising, but the percentage isn't exactly rising, especially if you consider that UNESCO recommends a 26%, for...
I have not been in government. I've never worked with a government institution to understand what it means to be realistic with this budgeting system. I understand UNESCO is looking at that for developing nations because they believe developed nations don't need that much. There are already some things in place to allow, education to continue with that free flow that it's having. But having said that, I understand that even in the United States, security always takes the largest chunk of the budget. So I'm looking at it that is it realistic to devote 26% to education? But before the stakeholders, crucify me, I'm just saying that I'm trying to be in the shoes of those people who are making this policy, that how realistic is this? But this current government has been able to approach close to 10%, which is a whole lot of improvement on what has been happening before. Then the question you and I should be asking is, what do you even do with the budget? What is the 10% going to do? Is it going to build more schools? Is it going to hire more teachers? Is it going to be about paying teachers better salary? Is it going to be about some things that may not have a direct impact on our on the education system, so to say, where we can have people we can call graduates, where we can have people that you won't call them unemployable graduates. We've seen all kinds of adjectives that have been used for people who graduate from schools. But beyond that, what do we do with this budget? How do we ensure 100% or even 80% implementation? Performing budget system. That should be our headache. That should be what we should be looking at. When we achieve this 26%, kudos to Nigeria if we can achieve that. But I'm saying that education, no doubt about it, is very critical. Government should even bear in mind that with good education and with good health system, because I love those two sectors, if we have it in place, trust me, we're going to have a high decrease in criminalities, which is one of the reasons why they're spending so much on security. Educate the nation, and you will be able to sleep with your two eyes closed.
All right, Kada. I understand that Yomi Otubela is live now. He's the National President, National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools. Mr. Otubela, let's begin by getting your stance and the stance of your organization on the student loan scheme introduced by the President Bola Tinubu administration.
Thank you so much for having me on this program tonight, and an excellent evening to Nigerians. I want to start by commending the initiative to have support for student to access fund to make it easy for everyone to acquire higher education. It is a welcome idea within us in the private schools, and we hope that we can do better currently with what the policy is talking about. However, we will have loved a situation whereby starting with federal government schools only should have been looked with a different angle. We will be suggesting that a given percentage from each of the tertiary institutions that are approved by the commission in charge of tertiary institutions should have been looked into instead of paying attention to only federal government university. We could pick a particular percentage from each of the federal government, the states, and of course the private universities that are available in the country, since we have all the children in these schools to be majority Nigerian children. Aside this, we see it as a right step, and that have started with right direction. We can continue to support the initiative by providing positive feedback that can make it more impactful.
Now that you've spoken about your expectations as regards the implementation of the scheme, let's talk about the budgetary provisions and how it affects you as a private, as a proprietor, really. Does the budget really, get to you in any way? Are you asking for any subventions from government, to partake of whatever is being allocated? Like for this year, it's 1.44 trillion naira.
Yes, let me start from saying that private schools have never benefited from budgetary allocation, either directly to the school or to the staff or to children attending this private institution. We have in the past advocated for support from federal government by extending the teaching and exposure capacity building of role models, teaching staff and non-teaching staff through trainings that federal government offered those in the public sector. We have also offered a situation where a percentage of what is expected of a student to be paid to on behalf of these children to support private school, and with that, that can make private school education more affordable, as it is being done in other clans in the world. As it stands today, we have not been able to get government attention on this. We'll keep advocating for that until we have the listening ear of the government. And aside that, the budgetary allocation for this year, which is put less than 10%, of course, falls short the expectation of UNESCO, as has been said earlier on by the gentleman in the studio. I also want to say here that the performance of even the little amount allocated need to be addressed as a way to go forward. You can argue that the current allocation to education is higher than what was done in last year budget. But how far have we been able to raise funds to implement this allocation? That has been a challenge from the past year. And of course, this year is not exempted, as we can see from the State House complaint of how the revenue has been low. And this, of course, has not made the budgetary allocation to meet the stated expectation, even though it comes at a very low expectation to those in the industry. And this has affected the ASU from continuing their agitation because the federal government, during this Bola Tinubu administration, had taken step to address the withheld salaries during the 2022 strike. Even when they have paid parts of this withheld salary, a huge amount of about 3.5 months salary has still been pending up to date that have not been attended to. And this also is as a result of the paucity of funds to implement the budget. We are aware that aside that, the funding of the university has become a major challenge within our tertiary institution. And this agitation is continuing. Even in recent time, we could testify to the fact that ASU is warming up for another round of strike industrial action. And of course, this is not going to augur well with our education system. We will not also not but talk about the out of school children, especially in the northern part of the country.
Yes.
In particular, with the northeast, where we have a good number of these children not attending school. Unfortunately, the government in each of these states had not done adequately well to also address this matter.
I hear you, Mr. Otubela. I hear you, the analysis you've given so far. But the thing is, in spite of, the number of out-of-school children and the difficulty that proprietors seem to be facing, schools appear to be springing up, almost on a daily basis with what you can call proliferation of schools. But then there's that question about standard. You yourself, I'm sure, are a product of public school just the same way as I am. So what do you think can be done, really, to improve the standard of education and ensure that whoever is said to have graduated from school, can be employable?
Yes, first and foremost, let's address the issue of quality and standard holistically in Nigeria as a nation. As it has affected other sectors, so also it is affecting private schools of education sector. I agree with you in totality that school is springing up, but you also need to be informed that many schools close down on timely basis, and this has not in any way benefited the system. The level of the impact of the regulatory body, the quality assurance department in each of the Ministry of Education from the state to the federal had not also done well by playing their statutory role of ensuring that only those who are qualified to run schools do so. And we could understand that education being one of the primary objectives of government to provide education for the teeming youths in the country. And since government had failed to meet this obligation, it becomes so difficult for them to walk tall with shoulder high to ensure that only schools who have passed through the minimum standard operate. As I speak with you now, there are so many schools in this country who do not pass through the registration process. Some of them are not known to their state government, and this, of course, is not good for the safety of our children. Recently, it was reported in the news that the particular proprietor in your state took away the children money for registration for external examinations and left the country with it and traveled out and sold the school building. So this shows the level of unsafe environment that school operates from.
Indeed,
and
Mr.
what could be
Otubela,
done to solve this is correct.
Indeed, Mr. Otubela, and I think also if there's any way that your association, being the Association of Proprietors, could actually also come in to see whoever, is spotted in town that doesn't belong to the association, that is not known, to actually be called out to ensure the standard of our education is maintained in the country. I must sincerely appreciate you for talking to us on the program. National President, National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, Yomi Otubela.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, I've had with me here in the studio Kayode Ladeyinde, Executive Editor at TVC News. Thank you so much for your perspective today.
The time was quite short for Otubela to say more. Well,
Yes,
we'll get to some other time.
Yes.